My name is Teresa Larson, and I'm talking with Mr. Bob Moorman, July 11th, 2011, in his lovely garden in Ames, Iowa. Mr. Moorman, do I have your permission to record your voice and take your picture today?
You certainly do.
Good. First of all, let's start with the easy questions. What is your birth date and where were you born?
I was born October 21, 1916, at Chadron, Nebraska, which is in the extreme northwest corner of the state, close to the Wyoming line, close to the Indian reservation in South Dakota.
And what did your father do?
My father was a traveling salesman, most of his life, first in furniture and later in undertaking supplies.
How did your family get from Nebraska to Ames?
Well, first we moved to Lincoln, Nebraska, and I went to kindergarten in Lincoln. And then I went to first grade in Denison, Iowa, and from there to Missouri Valley, Iowa, in Harrison County, north of Council Bluffs. Finished my high school there, and as soon as I graduated, my folks moved to Ames, so my brother and I could start college.
So I'm guessing that might have been in possibly 1923 or 24 you came to Ames?
Yes.
And where did your family take up residence? Where was your home?
The first place we lived was on Oakland Avenue, down at the foot of the hill. And my brother and I walked from there up and went through the fence on the Iowa State property, walked across the flat to about where the armory is today.
So when you made that path, was there a sidewalk or a road or anything, or did you go through
There was a cinder path.
a cinder path?
But when the snow, could be, I can remember it being more a foot or more deep in snow.
Mm-hmm. Were there many other people who lived on Oakland Street at the time?
Yes, a very good share of all the male students lived in rented rooms around town. So west of the Iowa State campus, there were lots of young men staying in homes.
Mm-hmm. Did you walk with your brother all the time, or did you walk with some other friends to school?
Usually he and I went at the same time, first thing in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Came home separately, of course.
Mm-hmm. Did you come home for lunch?
Yes, we did. I don't recall ever taking a lunch.
What was your class schedule like? You said you started early in the morning. Did you go all the way till 5 o'clock?
Normally, yes.
Well, I know it was on the quarter system.
Yes,
What-
there was.
What were some of the classes that you took?
Well, the thing that might surprise some people today, military training, for one, required for 2 years. And physical training, PE. And my regular courses, my first year, were 2 classes, 2 different chemistry classes, and English. And
Mm-hmm.
I took German in high school,
Mm-hmm.
but French in college.
Were you required to take a foreign language then?
One was required for a master's degree, and 2 languages were required for a PhD.
Now, it sounds like you started out in chemistry, but I know you as a wildlife and biology specialist. What happened?
Yes. Well, I lasted 1 year and 2 quarters in chemistry, and in Henry Gilman's organic chemistry, I got 2 C's those first 2 quarters. And if you can't do better than C in your major, you're in the wrong major. So I changed to zoology.
Mm-hmm. You must have been an outdoors kid, because otherwise, why would you switch to zoology?
Yes, I was an outdoor kid, all right. Growing up, my brother and I spent almost all our time out of days, winter as well as summer. We fished, we hunted, we trapped, and we just spent time in the outdoors. Made friends with a number of farmers out of town, where we could go and camp overnight in their meadows, this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot pigeons off the barn. and just enjoy farm life without the problems of being a farmer.
So let's go back to student life for just a bit. When you switched to zoology, you were probably a good student and you got better grades because it
Yes.
was a better match for you. What did you do for fun?
For fun, we danced a little, dated a little. There were dances always at Union Wednesday after 4 o'clock, and again on Friday, and then formal dancing on Saturday.
Were there many girls to dance with? Wasn't it mostly a male campus?
Mostly male campus, but a lot of the fellows didn't date. I think there was an adequate number of girls, and in addition to the college girls, there were also the town girls. And the dormitories had regular exchanges with men from the men's dorms, with men from those that lived out in town. We called it the ward system. The students, male students off campus, were organized into what they were called wards. They were organized, they had meetings, and they acted as a group.
I didn't know that.
In exchange dancing with girls at the dorms.
Were you a leader in that?
I was in the ward system, yes. Treasurer for several years.
Let's see. Does it correspond at all with the wards in town now? No, it doesn't. Okay. So you had some fun. Did you ever get into any mischief?
Not in college. I think when I came to college from a fairly small town of 5,000, you are scared of not doing well. So you know you've got to study hard, work hard, not play too much, pay attention to business. Otherwise, you're going to be dropped out of school and be a disappointment to your folks.
So let's talk about some of your professors at Iowa State. There is a woman who is now famous, but perhaps she wasn't appreciated as much in her time. Ada Hayden is a
Yes.
familiar name to many Ames people.
Yes, I knew her.
How did you know her?
She did a lot of work in the prairie areas, of course, and in the swampland, on prairie land. And I did a lot of botany work in connection with my research from a master's degree. And at that time, Ada was also in charge of the college herbarium, the plant collection. And I could take my specimens in and compare them with those in the herbarium. And Ada Hayden, bless her soul, was very kind to me. I wasn't a botany major. She let me have free run of the herbarium. And once I came across a plant identified by her on the plant specimen board that I disagreed with. And I went to her with it. I was quite wary about it at first, but she was very kind. She said, all right, make the correction and put your initials by it. And that's what I did.
Is that still there today?
I'm sure it is in the herbarium there somewhere.
Now, you were interested in certain kinds of birds for your master degree.
Yes.
And how did that relate to Ada Hayden? Because the birds that you were interested in a certain kind of grasses, yes?
Yes. My research was on the bobwhite quail in southern Iowa. And in connection with it, I mapped 8,000 acres of my study area with all the plant growth. So I collected a number of plant species, identified them, and those that I wasn't sure about, I took to the herbarium and checked with the herbarium specimen. So that's how I got acquainted with Ada Hayden. A delightful person.
And there were other good professors that you had at Iowa State. I think Mr. Hendrickson is someone that you liked and admired?
Yes, this was George Hendrickson, and he was my major professor as an undergraduate. he did much of the teaching in wildlife conservation.
So you graduated from Iowa State University, I'm going to guess, as an undergrad, or your bachelor's degree, maybe 1928, 29, something like that?
Yes, it took me 4 years and 2/4 to get the bachelor's degree.
So what was your first job after college?
Well, as soon as I graduated from college with a bachelor's degree, Iowa State offered me a graduate research appointment, which I wasn't prepared for. I was getting my resumes ready to send out to a number of schools, other schools. And they said there was a vacancy open and I could have it if I wanted it. So I stayed on and got my master's degree at Iowa State on the bobwhite quail in southern Iowa.
And once you finish your master's degree, what happens then?
Well, war was on. But I was free from the draft for a while because I was working on a degree. And under the system, you could continue to do your schoolwork. But as soon as you got that degree, bingo, you were 1A in the college draft, in the draft. They told me, the draft board told me they didn't want me right away. So I took a job with the United States Public Health Service, working with malaria mosquitoes in the southern states.
And maybe Arkansas?
Southwestern Arkansas, yes.
But in a way you were helping the military cause because you were looking for a way to eradicate things that affect soldiers.
Yes, our job was to protect military personnel at military installations in the area for 1 mile outside such areas. So I was able to work a while for them until my number did come up. And I sold my 1929 Model A for $150, took the bus back to Ames, and entered the Army.
Well, if we talk about your service in World War II, that's another conversation for another day. So we'll just jump back to Ames for a second.
Sure.
So you got back to Ames, and I'm assuming you might have started to work. I think you were a quail specialist, weren't you? 1946 to 48.
Yes, I got out of military service in '46, and still in uniform, I went to the Fish and Game Commission and asked about a possible job, and they wanted me to go to work the next Monday, working on bobwhite quail
And this is in the state of Iowa.
on the state of Iowa. And I told them I needed a week. My wife, Ruth, and I would like to have a second honeymoon for at least a week, and then I'd come to work. And that's happened that way.
And did it happen that way then?
Yes.
It did. It doesn't always happen that way in the modern world if you say, I want a little extra time.
Yes. I worked for the Fish and Game Commission for 2 years. And I was in the office one day, and a phone call from Iowa State came, and they wanted me to come up for an interview. So I did, took a job as Extension Wildlife Specialist, and worked at it for 5 years.
Nowadays, when there's a position open, there's a nationwide search, and they advertise in 5 or 6 magazines,
Yes.
but they just called you up.
Yes, it's required certainly today. Then the person in charge of the department could hire you without any discussion with anybody. If the position was open, he could call you, offer you the job, and you started work.
But they obviously knew they had the right person because you stuck with it and you did a great job for many, many, many years.
Yes, well, 5 years as Extension Wildlife Specialist, and then I got my PhD degree in those 5 years, working full-time and taking schoolwork. And I was offered a job at Kansas State, Manhattan, Kansas. So I went down there for 2 years, and one day home for lunch, a phone call from Iowa State came. They said the job was open, could I come back to Iowa State? And I did, again. No resume, no interview.
Just come on down.
Come on down, start work.
Well, good. Well, as an extension wildlife person, you have probably been to every single county and most of the towns in the state.
all the counties, but some of these little towns I may have missed. But certainly I got acquainted with a number of them, and I enjoyed it. Traveling around the state, seeing different things.
And so when you would do teaching sessions, let's say for fishing, you would tell the county agent you were coming to Clayton or you were coming to Winneshiek or wherever, and what would happen then?
Well, the way it worked was, as one of the central staff extension specialists, you had to offer a program out to the county extension people. And one of those things was farm fish ponds, for example.
Farm fish ponds, okay.
And the idea was to have an evening program at some particular fish pond picked out by the local people, the county agent, and the soil conservation people. And we'd have an evening meeting. People would gather. I'd bring along a net. We'd seine some fish, talk about the different sizes and whether it was a successful pond or not, based on the survival of the right species in the right proportions, really. About the weeds that grew in the pond, water conditions.
Did you draw a good crowd?
Oh, there'd be 100 to 150 people at many of those evening meetings. Ideal way to do it, and the county soil conservation people enjoyed it. They designed those ponds. The county agent appreciated it because he got out the crowd through his publicity.
Well, through extension, you also reached out through the medium of radio. And WOI in Ames was one of the early radio stations.
Yes, it was.
And who were some of your interviewers there?
Joyce Munn was one of my earliest on the women's programs, and then Betty Lou McVeigh succeeded her. But probably more of my radio and TV programs were with Dale Williams.
You must have also been with Martha Duncan on radio, I would think.
Martha Duncan on Home Economics Radio. I worked with the extension people in entomology. We would sit down and list on a number of possible programs for Martha Duncan Radio. Which one of us would take that certain week. Send those over to Martha Duncan, and she would never quarrel with our list at all. She would take them. So every Monday morning, one of the extension entomologists, or me, would go over to Martha Duncan in Home Economics and have a program.
And so what did the home economics people want to know about insects?
Well, of course, mostly the insect problems having to do with households.
Okay.
And that was would be some of the extension entomologist things. But I named a program for one of them one time that we called Unwed Mothers, and had to do with insects reproducing without mating. See? Martha Duncan didn't question the title. She didn't know who was going to say what until you got over there. She was a wonderful person to work with. Eleanor Wilkins was her real name.
You know what? Someone might think that was an X-rated topic.
But it had a good audience, our programs did. I had people write in from South Dakota, from Illinois. I had one little incident you might be interested in, a call from South Dakota. A woman who said her son was trapping while going to school. And this particular morning, he had a skunk in one of his traps. He killed the skunk, went on to school, and the teacher sent him home. He smelled. So his mother had him take a bath. She changed a complete change of clothing, sent him back to school, and the teacher sent him back home again. His mother wanted to know what is wrong. I said, "You've got one thing, Mother. You didn't stand there and insist that he wash his hair. Hair absorbs odors." So he still smelled the skunk, although he had taken 2 baths. But he hadn't washed his hair.
But you had the answer for her.
We tried to have the answers. Otherwise, you just say, "I don't know."
Well, sometimes that's the best answer.
It
if
is
you
the
don't.
best answer in
Yeah.
many cases.
Well, let's go back to the Iowa State campus for just a second, but still as your role as wildlife extension. Were there ever any wildlife problems on the Iowa State University campus you had to deal with?
Well, I dealt 3 times with bats on the Iowa State campus, twice in Morrill Hall, one of the oldest buildings on campus, and the Old English building south of Beardshire. Again, it was bats that were getting into an old building and disturbed people. So my job was to search for what locations the bats were getting into the house, and give advice on what to do about those openings, get them closed up while the bats were out.
You didn't want to close it up while the bats were still
You
in.
don't close it up in the middle of the day because they were inside resting, waiting for evening. You got to be ready to close that last opening during the night when they're out flying around chasing mosquitoes.
So you kind of had some late nights working then if you had to close the bat doors.
Well, I didn't do the work myself. I advised on it. I did the same thing down at the Octagon. The Octagon here in Ames.
The Octagon had bats?
The top floor, yes.
And was it when it was the Arts Center or earlier when it was Collegiate
No.
Manufacturing?
No, when it was already the Octagon.
Already the Octagon. And that frightens people. Bats frighten people.
Yes, people are afraid of them.
Should they be afraid of them?
No. No, rats won't bite, and bats won't bite, unless they're rabid. And you have to be confined. If you pick one up and it's alive, it will bite, certainly. A mouse will also. If they can escape, they will do so. But if you pick one up, they'll bite.
Well, let's go back to Iowa State University campus for just a moment. Somebody gave me a tip that you had to deal with muskrats once.
As a pest on Iowa State, yes, and it had to do with economy researchers raising inbred lines of corn for their breeding work, growing such corn inbreds on the Skunk River floodplain. And muskrats would get in and destroy row after row of that valuable inbred seed. So they would call me about it, and most of the time I'd just take some traps, go down and trap the muskrats myself in that case, to get rid of them.
Were there other wildlife problems on Iowa State University campus itself that you had to deal with?
No, there wasn't really. That I didn't have to deal with any bird problems. Oh, a couple of times. Instances where heavy growth of vines on the sides of the building, like the north side of home economics in those days, was all heavy with vines. And at roosting places for sparrows at night, with the problem of the bird droppings on the sidewalks, etc. The real answer is to get rid of the plants, get rid of the vine. They really don't want to do that because they are attractive. But as long as the vines are there, the birds are going to enjoy roosting in.
It's a catch-22.
Their choice.
Yeah, their choice, exactly. Let's talk a little bit, go forward. Not only were you mentioned Dale Williams, so we'll talk
Yes.
a little bit about that. He was a really good interviewer later on. This is
A very excellent person to have programs with. He knew what questions to ask. He knew the points that you wanted to make. So it's an easy flow in working with Dale Williams.
So did you get some questions sometimes that would make you laugh on the radio, that people would call in and they would say, I've got some sort of wildlife stuck in my garage, and they didn't know how to handle it?
Yes, you have those kind of problems. Skunks in garages. One instance, the woman called the police. The policeman came out and shot the skunk in the garage.
heavens.
No, not in the garage, thank you. Get the skunk out of the garage before you kill it, if you have to kill it.
I bet that garage smelled for a while.
Well, you have those, and skunks, all kinds of creatures, possums, whatever, in window wells that can't get out.
Mm-hmm.
Had a call one time, 10 o'clock at night. Woman had been watching TV. She heard a scratching sound someplace. She got up and walked from the living room, where she was watching TV, through the dining room, through the kitchen, past the door to the bathroom, into the bedroom hallway, back to the living room, no sound. Sat down again, she heard the scratching. Second time around, she's going by the bathroom door, and where she heard the scratching, that was coming from. She opened up the lid of the toilet. Down inside the toilet bowl was this creature scrambling to climb out, but would get part way out and slip on the polished bowl, and splash down into the water again. This is a case of a squirrel, young squirrel, thinking that exhaust pipe that sticks up, ventilation pipe that sticks up through the roof, in back of every toilet in town. Thinking that was the trunk of a tree, and went down it and couldn't get back up. So he had to swim through the trap in the toilet bowl and come out in the toilet itself.
What did she do with that problem?
Flushed the toilet repeatedly until it drowned. Then she called me, and I went over and fished it out and told her what it was.
Oh my goodness. Oh, well, let's talk a little bit more about traveling the state. Are there really neat things that you saw when you traveled the state that made you proud to be an Iowan, or just struck you as really beautiful?
Well, I think it was the scenery and the excellent growth of farm crops. I saw most of the state parks. So I'd have a few moments where I could run into a new state park and see what was there, and enjoy it before going on. I really enjoyed traveling the state. I enjoyed new places, different scenery, and of course I had a number of friends in the county extension offices scattered around the state. I remember one morning I got up in extreme eastern Iowa, Clinton, I think it was maybe. I stopped at a town just east of Iowa City to visit with a game warden that I knew. I had coffee with he and his family at 8 o'clock in the morning, and he said, "I've got something to show you." And out in the cardboard box in the back porch, he had 4 baby skunks that had been dug out by a road grader the day before.
My goodness.
We talked to him. I said, "You want one?" I said, "Yes, I'm going to a 4-H camp this afternoon. It'll be the subject of my nature study program." And that's what happened. A little baby skunk, no fur. I stopped at the next town, bought a cardboard dolly nursing kit, got some milk from the camp cooks, and the kids got to hold a little baby skunk and feed it from a baby bottle.
Which tells me you kept your eyes and ears open all the time for possibilities to teach.
Yes. Yes, I did. I can remember making a collection of spider webs. Spray a spider web with aluminum paint spray. Use a black cardboard, press it up against the web, and the web sticks to the cardboard. Snip the edges of the web, and you've got, on that black colored cardboard, you've got a spider web.
That's clever.
And I used those on TV with Betty Lou one time.
Well, you knew how to create visuals.
Yes.
Let's talk, just since we're talking about people you know and people that you got to know around Iowa, because your dad was in the business of selling undertaking supplies.
Yes.
Did he happen to know the Adams Funeral Home people in Ames?
Yes, he knew them. But Ames was about the eastern edge of his territory.
Okay.
And his friends were all out in the county. funeral directors, etc.
Right, right.
He was gone from home much of the time. He'd be home on Monday, come home Friday night.
Right.
My mother would wash and iron his shirts and things and get him ready to go back out the next Monday. So we were essentially raised by my mother, bless her soul.
Yes. There were lots of families that did that. There were lots of families that did that.
And as you get older, you realize more than you do when you're youngsters. How much that woman put into your life, and how much you should have honored her more than maybe you did.
Well, you did live at home, so you could have a continuing relationship with your mom when you were an undergraduate at Iowa State University. Tell me a little bit about the campus. For example, let's talk about winter. Did they shovel the walks?
They did.
Okay.
They did. And as good, I think, as they do today, where they have better equipment, more equipment. But of course, they have more sidewalks to get
Shovel
cleaned
now.
also.
Yes. And were there very many trees? Was it pretty cold walking across that campus?
It was to get to campus, because that area east of Sheldon was vacant, where now it's half full of buildings. The campus itself was chilly, probably, but the people, women in home economics, I mean the women living in women's dorms on the east side of the campus, if they had to go over to PE.
In State Gym?
Yes, they didn't have women's gym.
That was a long walk.
They did have some in old botany.
Oh, in Old Botany, okay. Did you go into any football games at Clyde Williams Stadium?
Yes, I think normally we did, to the football games and the basketball games.
I can't
Student
remember.
prices were cheaper than
yes.
adult prices, you know.
So what was it? What did it cost to go to a? Do you happen to all remember what it cost to go to a
I
game?
don't remember what the prices were.
Yeah. So was Iowa State College very good then? Did you watch winning teams?
We did have some. Some great times in football. One year they earned the title the Dirty Dozen because the players were so dirty from playing the whole game. They played both offense and defense in football back then. They didn't substitute like crazy as they do now. And I remember in basketball, the year we beat Wilt Chamberlain of Kansas. That's when his name was Wilt Chamberlain before he changed his name.
Yes. Tell me a little bit more about college life. You said you went to the Memorial Union sometimes for dances. What else were there? Were there?
Memorial Union was really the social center of the university.
Yes.
So all the dances, the exchanges, and you could get complete meals downstairs instead of sandwiches and fast food kind of thing as they do today. The Memorial Union was always busy with students. Back then, it was very important to the students, I think.
I understand you're a life member of the Memorial Union, probably because
Yes.
it meant a lot to you when you were
When
there
I
in those days.
got that first extension job after I got my bachelor's degree, working with Bob White Quayle, from my $750 a year salary, I bought a $40 typewriter, a $100 automobile, and I paid my life membership into Memorial Union. So I'm still a life member of Memorial Union.
I think that was probably a pretty good deal. Had Visha started when you were an undergraduate yet? Was there a
It
Visha
had started by the time I finished. Yeah.
by the time you finished? What kind of a celebration was it?
A very important one, I think. Much more valuable to the university than it is now, because of the county agents encouraged 4-H kids to come to Visha, which helped a great deal in recruiting students and getting students to want to come to Iowa State for a degree. So I think Visha was much more important back then. Greater participation at all the fraternities, the dormitories, etc. building floats.
They were simpler then too. They weren't as elaborate or
That's
maybe as
right,
expensive,
yes, because
probably to
they
make.
didn't have the money to be very expensive.
Right.
They borrowed a lot of things for some of their floating floats.
Did you ever help build a float?
Never helped build a float. No. Much of my undergraduate work, time, however, I was working for the department. That started quite early after my first quarter in conservation.
And what did you do
education.
for the department?
Well, my first job that they offered me was a summer job helping take care of pheasants. The state of Iowa was at that time trying to establish ring-necked pheasants as a game bird in the state. They'd been buying birds from Wisconsin, adult birds, turning them loose, and they'd disappear. They wanted to try a more natural way of stalking them so that they would survive. So I was a nursemaid for a bunch of young pheasants in some big pens with 6-foot-high fences down south of Council Bluffs. My very first summer, after I took the conservation education option of education. And from then on, they had work for me.
You proved yourself.
The first job, next job, was in connection with a research project on foxes. But my job was to conduct an independent study of turkey vultures.
Those are not very pretty birds, I got to tell you.
They're not pretty with the red head, but they're very interesting. So I followed some of those birds through the whole year from egg to flying adult. I worked a lot of time with the Red Fox Project, sometimes trying to follow foxes for a whole week. Get in the morning, locate tracks they made that early that morning, and follow them by tracking the rest of the day to determine what they ate, where they went to the toilet, what they caught.
Because you'd see the bones and all that stuff.
Yes.
All the remains of their
Yes.
day.
And I worked for a little bit with foxes. I worked for a short while with muskrats.
So tell me a little bit about foxes. I mean, in my backyard, I used to have a red fox that would go back and forth.
Yes.
They were pretty prevalent, even close to cities.
Well, they're everywhere. And even coyotes today have become quite accustomed to people and have taken over in town. The problem with towns is they put tags on dogs. You can't let a dog run loose. Kids can't have BB guns anymore. So rabbits, for example, and crows and foxes can move into town. And sometimes the food is better in town than out in the country.
Easier pickings.
That's right. We have people that feed birds like we do are accustomed to occasionally seeing a Cooper's hawk attempting to catch birds because they are bird-eating predators off of their bird feeding stations, moved into town.
Because what I'll hear is thump, 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 and it's the little birds that are fleeing the predator bird hitting my windows, and I'll go, oh my gosh, there must have been a hawk out here.
Yep.
Okay, speaking of predators, and I'm just going to use a non-scientific term, scary wildlife.
Yep.
What, in the state of Iowa, did we really ever have a scary predator population of animals?
No, not really. Not really. Things like coyotes today or bobcats today, or back then, were not predators on people. They might have gotten into trouble with people, but they were more frightened of people than people were of them, really. So I don't think we had harmful people, wild creatures that were serious.
I'll go ahead and let you have a sip of your soda here.
Yes.
You've talked for a long time. Give you just a chance to take a break. because I want to talk just a little bit more about wildlife situation. Because sometimes people will call in to newspapers and say, "Oh, well, we think we saw a cougar in the state." Are they just seeing things?
Well, sometimes they are, but there are cougars in Iowa.
Hmm.
They have moved in, probably from the west primarily, uh, and learned to adopt. People don't, I don't say don't, they rarely see them because they don't want to be bothered with by people either. And they'll go about their business, and as long as they can get food, rabbits or whatever.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell me about your career in wildlife extension that I haven't asked you about? That you like to, just about your career?
Well, I would really want to say that I've greatly enjoyed it. I work with wildlife both on my own and as an employee. I enjoy wild things, but I also enjoy plants of all kinds. So I guess I just enjoy being here today as a 94-year-old old man.
And what I might not have asked you about Ames history or living in Ames, say before World War II, that you'd like to tell me about?
Well, one thing, when my folks moved here to Ames, the dinky had quit running between downtown Ames but 13th Street was just a dirt road. 6th Street wasn't there at all. So if the students wanted to go to downtown Ames, they walked Lincoln Way. Okay. So they were almost separate communities. Now they're much closer together, of course, by housing and streets.
So for example, when you came to Iowa State University, where would your mom go to market? Where would she go buy meat, or where would she buy eggs or fresh produce?
Well, we did have grocery stores, and the town had a great many neighborhood grocery stores. It gradually disappeared. Little grocery stores, but close by, close to where we live now, there was one just short of Roosevelt School, for example. There was one further over on 9th Street, across the other side of Grand Avenue. A great many on West Street that my folks went to some.
That's right. On West Street might have been 5 or 6 blocks from your house on the bottom of Oakland Hill. So you weren't really that far from a neighborhood grocery store.
That's right.
Did people ride a lot of bicycles?
Very few bicycles, actually. Now, and I don't know why.
People just walked?
People walked.
They might have been healthier then.
It was, except on bitterly cold days.
Yes, then it's no fun. But it's been certainly a lot of fun talking with you. Thank you for sharing your memories. I hope you would be open to me coming back if I think of some things I really feel it would be fun.
Please do come back.
And have a really pleasant day, and thank you for sharing your garden with me.
Thank you. I've enjoyed talking to you.